Good evening, my dears. Welcome. I'm Lady Creepypasta. This evening we have a tale from author Peck. If you enjoy this tale and would like to read more from the author, go to kphorror.wordpress.com. A note of warning, my lovelies. This tale might not be safe for work. So, be wary of who is around you. But now, my dears, it is time. So come, lean in closer, and we'll begin. My wife Jennifer has always had a deep fascination with insects, particularly bees. She was a hobbyist beekeeper when I first met her, and my fear of the stinging little buggers started to subside once she showed me the world of beekeeping. They were actually quite docile creatures, unless they were being threatened. At our wedding, she walked down the aisle in a white beekeeping suit, and when we bought our first home, I surprised her by starting up a significant amount of hives in the back of the property. She was ecstatic, and that night we had even better sex than we had on our wedding night. Fast forward 5 years, and Jen had started her own honey business. It was doing quite well, actually, when the hurricane hit. It was mid-July when it happened. We did what we could to protect the hives, but the largest tree in the backyard fell and crushed more than half of the hives. The rest were torn apart by the high-speed winds, all except one. Jen was absolutely devastated, but the storm still raged on. She had donned her beekeeping suit and run out into the storm, and then there was no other option but to bring it inside. We set it down in the garage and closed the door. Then we gathered all of the flowers and plants in the household, which was a lot because I'm a plant nerd and I love indoor greenery, and placed them in the garage with the surviving bees. There wasn't much else we could do. Later that evening, Jen came in from the garage to inform me that 2 bee colonies were forced to share one hive and that there wasn't enough room for both of them on the single hive we had saved. She had to separate the queens, but where was she going to put them? All hell was breaking loose with the storm outside, and there was no way to immediately access a new hive. She added some of the homemade honey to her cup of chamomile and fretted over the 2 colonies. That's when the power blew. She screamed and threw her arms around me. I think the shock of the lights going out allowed her to let loose her emotions about losing some of the other colonies, and she broke down in my arms. "We have to save these last 2. We have to," she said, sobbing. While I knew a bit about beekeeping from just being in Jen's life, I didn't know what the right answer was in the moment. All I wanted was to fix things, but not everything can be fixed right away. I knew it would take her forever to reaccumulate the colonies she'd previously had. We eventually got into our pajamas and decided to save our problem-solving for the following morning. Jen made us each a cup of sleepy time tea with the perfect amount of orange blossom honey while I watched the storm through the sliding glass doors that gave a full view of our mess of a backyard. There were definitely no other salvageable hives. We drank our tea in silence and then got ready for bed. That night, it felt like sleep knocked me out with the force of a sledgehammer. I attributed it to the stressful day we had both had, but despite my body's will to remain unconscious, I was awoken in the middle of the night. Have you ever had sleep paralysis before? That's what this felt like. My eyelids were droopy but open, and I could not move a muscle. I quickly realized that I was no longer in bed. I was laying on the wood floor, wrapped in a bedsheet, and I was being dragged along by someone I couldn't see. My eyes flitted from side to side, taking in my surroundings. I was being dragged to the garage door. Once I was over the threshold, the dragger plopped me down on the concrete and shut the door behind us. When the figure turned around, my eyes met my wife's. Her face was wet with tears, and there was a strange look in her eye. What was going on? I tried to ask her, but my voice would not come out and my mouth would not move. All I could do was lie there and stare at her, listening to the sound of my rapid heartbeat and my ragged breathing. "Hi, honey," she said with a small, bittersweet smile. She reached down and brushed my hair back out of my eyes. "I didn't want it to have to be this way, but there's nothing else around the house that I can use, and I certainly can't go out there right now." She jerked her thumb back over her shoulder, indicating that she was talking about going outside in the hurricane. She stepped over me and approached my power tools, carefully selecting a drill bit from a drawer. She grabbed the drill itself and attached the bit. Then she plugged it in and gave it a few test whirs. My eyes widened as she came back over to me and got on her knees. She gave my body a once-over. "I guess I should start from the bottom," she noted hesitantly. Her finger pressed down on the drill's trigger, and she lowered the spinning drill to my left calf. My heart was beating out of my chest as she drove the diamond drill bit into the skin and muscle of my calf. I tried to scream, but there were two problems. One, my voice was trapped, and two, there were no neighbors around for miles to hear me even if I could scream. She brought the drill to my flesh again and again and again, splattering blood everywhere while she created tiny holes all the way from my ankle to my hip. The pain was unbearable, as though I was being stabbed over and over again by 100 tiny knights. Blood pooled on the floor beneath my left leg, and though I could not move voluntarily, my body shook with agony and fear. After over an hour of this torture, she started working on my other leg. By the end of the second leg, my lower extremities were nothing but bloody, hole-filled, pulp-like flesh. "Shh," she whispered, brushing my hair back again with her blood-soaked hands. Tears flowed freely down my cheeks. "I'm almost done," she said reassuringly, though I was not in the least reassured. She worked on the fatty part of my gut, and I was positioned so I could actually peer into the holes that she was drilling there. I saw the blood spring up and begin to flow in several slow streams down my abdomen, eventually converging to a drip into an ever-growing puddle beneath me. The whole garage smelled of sickly sweet copper. Finally, after hours of torture, and the drill having sunk into my flesh more than 1,000 times, she relinquished the drill and placed it back on the work table beneath the wall of power tools. "I'll wash that later," she muttered to herself. Then she turned back around to face the bloody mess of a human being that I had become. "Don't look at me like that. You know I love you, but the bees, they were my first love. I'd rather incapacitate you than lose them entirely. And just think, you'll be providing shelter for hundreds of lives that make the earth bloom with lush flora. And you love plants. Don't you want to make the plants happy, like I have to make the bees happy? She desperately tried to explain herself to a man who could say nothing. Anyway, she sighed, I guess it's time to find one of the queens. She picked up her smoker that had been sitting on the same tabletop as the drill and poured fuel into it. Soon enough, it was producing smoke, and Jen smoked out the bees. Once they had settled, she began to root around amongst them, searching for the largest bee in the swarm. A few minutes went by as she searched, and in that time, I realized that I was able to wiggle my toe. It hurt like hell to move at all, but moving was a good sign. Whatever she had put in my tea must have been wearing off. Ah, there you are. What are you doing in this hive, old girl? This isn't yours, she cooed. Then she leaned in and feigned listening to the bee talk. What's that? No, of course I'd never leave you without a hive. I made a brand new one for you. See? Jen knelt down before me and let the queen down on the bloody surface of my gut. She moved slowly, lazy from the smoke. Then she stumbled upon a belly hole that she must have found particularly intriguing and began to squeeze herself down inside. In went her head. Then she started to wiggle her fat abdomen in that particularly unsettling way that insects do, to go deeper into her newfound home. Her legs scrambled to get a grip on the slippery, bloody surface, but finally she pushed herself all the way inside. I could feel her squirming. Then I felt a biting sensation. Did she sting me? I felt the stab over and over again. True, queen bees had the ability to sting multiple times, but why would she sting her new home's walls? As the other bees began to come out of their daze and wander over to my flesh holes, more began to settle in, and I realized that the stinging sensation was not, in fact, stinging. They were burrowing deeper. I could hear the insects squirming inside my legs and abdomen, and the world became abuzz. At this point, I found that I could move both of my feet. The bees kept coming until my skin disappeared beneath the writhing mass of insects. Several crawled on my face, and a few went up my nostrils or into my ears. I watched as a bee crawled over the iris of one of my dry, open eyes. I felt like my skin was literally crawling. My wife had left the room at some point. I was too caught up in the fact that my body was being used as a nest to notice exactly when she left, and eventually, I tried again to scream. I could feel my voice rising in my throat, and I was ready to set my screams free, but instead, that rising feeling in my throat turned into a tickle on my uvula. Suddenly, I had the urge to vomit, but I could not open my mouth. I puked with my mouth closed, but instead of feeling chunky warm liquid, I felt the steps of scores of tiny legs tickling my tongue and the roof of my mouth. The bees burst forth through my lips. They must have burrowed from my belly into my stomach, the thought of which made me want to vomit for real. Instead, I used every single ounce of strength I had and tried to move my paralyzed legs. They twitched and my heart began to race. I looked at the door that led into the house, hopeful that I would have time to make my great escape. I didn't even consider how I was going to manage to get these bees out of me. After another half hour, I could bend my knees. My heart fluttered with hope. Or bees? Then I saw the door handle began to turn. I managed a small whimper and willed my legs to make me stand. But then Jen was there again, and I began to sob. I didn't have enough control of my face or mouth to actually sob, so it sounded like a drunk guy whose moans of misery was slurred. "Oh, shh, don't cry, honey. This is a wonderful new beginning. Here, this will make the pain go away," she said. She brought some more tea to my lips, and at first I was able to turn my head away a little so as not to drink the liquid. "Oh, now don't be like that," she said sternly. Then pried open my jaw, and now that my esophagus was clear of bees, the hot drink spilled easily down my throat. It was only a matter of 10 or so minutes before I felt the same sledgehammer of sleep from before smacking me in the face. Everything faded, and the world went black. Things went this way for many weeks, and during this time, my wife cleaned up the backyard, got rid of the fallen tree, planted a new garden outside, and ordered some new hives. Before the new hives came, however, she had her first honey harvest from me. The honey was a rich caramel that bordered on red, a tint taken on from the blood, and a spoonful of this stuff had a calming sedative effect. Not strong enough to knock a person out, the way Jen knocked me out any time I started to try to move, just enough to make you sleepy and have sweet dreams. Almost like a melatonin effect. This was probably because of the fact that the hive it came from was constantly being filled with narcotics. Aside from that, it was quite sweet and pleasant tasting. Yes, I tried it myself. Jen force-fed me, trying to get me to see the benefits of her little project. And you know what? I saw what she meant about the marvel of fostering life within me. I began to feel closer to the bees that had taken up residence in my legs and belly. Was this what it felt like to be a mother carrying a child in the womb? Jen and I would never know. We had agreed to never have children. The bees were our children. After several harvests, Jen and I were actually able to reconcile. Her new hives arrived, and she has started several new colonies that produce fantastic honey. But there was one honey that stood out above the rest, and that honey was my own. It was her best seller, and I liked the feeling of contributing to the business in a way I hadn't before. She no longer drugs me to keep me docile. She only does it for the sedative effects in the honey. Sometimes I'm even allowed inside the house. First, she would smoke me out. Then we could proceed to be together until the hive awoke. I have access to food, water, internet, cable, a passionate wife, and a dry roof over my head. What more could a guy really ask for? The pain of the bees living inside of me hasn't completely subsided. They still had to tunnel through the flesh once my wounds started to heal over. Spoiler, they never fully would. I don't plan on ever going to the police or really coming out in public at all, but life isn't all that bad. Business is buzzing. The flowers are blooming, and as far as I care, the whole world can let me and my honey be. Do let me know what you think of that tale, my lovelies. If you're listening on the podcast, be sure to pop me a message on social media. I am Lady McCreepsta on both Facebook and Twitter. If you're listening to this on YouTube, leave me a comment below. To those of you who have just stumbled upon my realm, welcome, my dears. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and to those who have stumbled upon me on YouTube, hit that bell icon as well to be notified of new uploads. That's all I have for you this evening, my dears. Till next time, sweet dreams.